Hello, podcast listeners. This is your host with the most, JJ. It's JJ Meets World. Thank you so much for listening. Our episode today features Mark J Lindquist. You have to have the J period in the middle. He'll explain why. This episode is full of awesome energy. You're going to meet an amazing human being, and I hope that you walk away from this as inspired as I was. I'm sweating right now. I enjoyed this episode so much. So sit back, relax, and by the way, if you hit the subscribe button, we sure would appreciate that. It's JJ Meets World with you, listener meets world. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
Okay, we've begun. Mark Lindquist is with us, and I gotta apologize because I thought you were on the podcast already, and it turns out you're not. And now we're 230 some episodes deep, and I'm now just making up for that. So if I've been telling people, listen, these are the episodes of my podcast you have to listen to, Alex Rydell, Mark J Lindquist, they've been searching for this episode. They can't find
it's
it.
a real demarcation point between before and after we had Mark on the show.
It truly is. And I think it's because every time I talk to you, I have such an amazing time. You're one of the most inspirational, like positive vibe people I've ever met in my life without coming off like a schmuck. Right?
I don't like to come off as a schmuck.
Good. Well done. So far, so good.
That's the bar.
So I want to start with this. Let's start with like who you are and where you came from, because your story is worthy of a podcast series just in itself.
Very honored. I like your thinking, Tucker, that you know it's BM and AM before Mark and after Mark, right?
Oh yeah.
Forget all this AD, BC stuff, right?
Yeah.
So Mark J Lindquist is my name. Let's explain that. You had to add the middle initial J because there's some jerk out in Seattle who's a Pierce County prosecutor named Mark Lindquist, and nobody likes this guy. So it's not that I'm pretentious, we're all about myself. It's just when you Google me, I didn't want that jerk to be, the one you find.
Right. You didn't put Esquire at the end. You're fine.
So Mark J Lindquist, and I always start the story at the beginning. Born in Seoul, South Korea in 1981, and put in an orphanage. And for the first 8 months of my life, I lived in that orphanage, and then was so fortunate to be chosen for adoption. I was one of the 15% of the young people in those orphanages that got plucked out, and we did nothing to deserve such a thing. And for the other 85%, the call never came. I got chosen by the Lindquist family, rural Minnesota, Ortonville, Minnesota, 2 hours south of Fargo, and lived on a farm. Grew up there with my older sister, natural born, and then myself adopted in 1982. And so, from the very beginning of your life, you think about mom, your earliest memories of mom and dad on the farm. She spins the globe and she points to Seoul, Korea. And she says, this is where you came from. Because pretty soon you start asking, why do I not look like everybody else, And
literally, because Ortonville, you stuck out like a sore thumb, like no tomorrow, I imagine.
100%. Me and 2 other Asians in the whole county, and who I still get mixed up with John, the other guy, who's there. And, he hasn't been in Ortonville for 25 years. And
you're having another Diet Mountain Dew today, huh, John? Be like, nope, Mark.
Happens all the time. Every time I go in the drugstore. And so that was a reference to somebody who works at the drugstore. So, small town, Ortonville, and such a fortunate upbringing. I always tell the story that nobody ever made me feel like I was different there in a small town with barely any diversity. They were just so open and welcoming to a kid that didn't look like them. And so, I've always credited Ortonville, Minnesota, population 2,000 at the foot of Big Stone Lake, for giving me my start in life. Because you know how it is, especially with today's racial reckoning. It could have gone a lot differently. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know, I guess I've just lived my entire life with this narrative of, I'm pretty darn fortunate to be here. and tried to express that gratitude through my life and actions. And it's been a wild ride.
I love the fact that, and you can't see this, but Mark is smiling ear to ear. Like you're always excited to tell people about where you came from. And it is amazing. I mean, so I'm curious to know this, your parents, why did they decide to adopt a baby from Seoul, Korea?
Two things. My mom, when my sister was born in 1977, couldn't have babies anymore, and so there was another family in town, John Moorhead's family, who they mistake me for often, who was in my sister's class.
John Moorhead.
Yeah, John Moorhead.
Great name.
And, got the idea from them. And then we had a great aunt that was working at Children's Home Society, or on the board down in Minneapolis. That's the adoption agency. They and not LSS, that's Fargo, but No, I think it might be Lutheran Social Services
all over like the region. Yep.
Yeah, and so they, have brought many Korean adoptees to Minnesota, and it's funny. People sometimes don't know Minnesota is one of the leading states in Korean adoptees anywhere in the country, and so I happened to be fortunate to be one of them. And so they kind of got this idea. I can't remember. They watched some movie back in the late 70s that kind of sprang the idea too, and so they just started thinking, maybe this is a viable option for them to have a son. And Dad had served in the Peace Corps in Malaysia and, had been around the Asian cultures. And that was just never even a thought that it would be weird for a, Swedish Norwegian family to adopt an Asian kid. And it has worked out fabulously.
Yeah. Love is love, right?
Yeah.
And as long as you've got love to spend and to spread, it doesn't matter where the family was built. It just matters that it's happening now.
Yep. Not a lot of people know this, but when JJ was a baby, he was actually adopted by a family in South Korea.
Yeah.
And spent the first 8 months there.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was an intense time.
From the Lindquist family?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Lindquist in South Korea. Yeah.
So, okay. So you,
I want to know the opposite story though. Like this must happen at some point.
Right. It sounds like a Chris Farley movie, doesn't it? Like Chris Farley was adopted by a family in anywhere outside the United States, and maybe he bounces as a young boy, and they CG his face onto a little tiny
I was going
kid's
to say
body.
Tom Hanks, but I'm glad you went with Chris Farley. That makes more sense.
Tom Hanks should be the dad.
That's true.
Right? He's the dad who's constantly searching for his son. Did we just write a brand new major motion picture?
And I want to tell you guys, I know William Hung. He could play me.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
There you go.
We got an all-star cast.
Absolutely.
I just watched William Hung's episode of Arrested Development yesterday, where
good
it's
Lord.
William Hung and the Hung jury. Then they sing the theme song to the Judge Reinhold court television show. Okay, so you grow up in Ortonville,
Yes.
and it sounds like you have this great agriculture-based childhood.
Yeah.
And then what? Where does the world take you?
You grow up on the farm, the family of four out there on a oh gosh, now I got to talk agriculture, half section. And
How many hectares is that?
oh my gosh,
I couldn't tell you the
that's
conversion
thing,
rate.
Is that acres is different than hectares.
How many bushels did it make?
Yeah, there you go.
Yield. What yield? Yes.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. And what do they farm too? Just take a step back.
It was small grains. It was corn and beans and wheat and alfalfa. And we had cows and pigs. And I want to let you know that I wasn't the brightest bulb in the pack because my Uncle Chuck had horses and I was a little jealous. And when I realized that you could ride horses, I said, well, I want to do that too. What did I have at my disposal? Pigs. So I tried to ride the pig.
How did it go?
Mom did some extra laundry that day.
Yeah, okay, great. Went really well. Really well.
But yeah, small town farm life. And graduated with a kid, a graduating class of 69 kids in 1999. And life was about the community. It was about Mom and Dad teaching me to serve. It was about Dad doing Sunday night slideshows of the, traveling around the world in the Peace Corps and idolizing my older sister. And I just wanted to be another one of the kids. I didn't always want to be the Asian kid, right? They tried to take me down to Children's Home Society and do Korea Day. And that's the one day a year where you'd have to learn how to eat with chopsticks. And I'm like, what the hell is this? I just want to go to McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
And so it's, it is this fantastic and unique upbringing that really just worked out so fantastically. And, I got to give credit to Mom and Dad, Gordon and Diane Lindquist, and my older sister Heidi for, welcoming me to the family and loving me, even though I looked a little different.
Well, like even though I was never adopted, my family had a couple of breakups and get backs together and stuff so my family currently, the people who I call my family, is a patchwork of people I'm blood related to, people who I technically am no longer step siblings with, but we still have a relationship.
Awesome.
People who I've just known since I was a kid, who we were never technically related in any way, like JJ, but like is still like a family member.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that there's the DNA family that we kind of go by for some reasons, but it seems like family are those people who you choose to be around, who you choose to stay in their life, right? You choose to have them in your life, and that ends up being a truer sense of family than anything else.
I think people also give a bad rap to people from our area and how white bread we are up here, because my cousin Gina was adopted from South Korea.
Yeah.
And I never thought twice about it as a kid, right? Growing up. And even today, when someone says like, oh, tell me a little bit about your cousin Gina, I'm like, oh man, she's so creative. And she's like amazing. Like when it comes to like therapy and understanding like people's emotions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, and here's a picture of her. And they're like, oh, she's Asian. And I'm like,
I forgot to tell you.
Yes. I guess I forgot that as a descriptor, but it is interesting to me, the fact that like you essentially were able to grow up and not feel like an outcast.
Totally.
I mean, am I correct in that?
100% correct. And, maybe the only time I would is on the second grade playground when they pick on my small eyes and my flat nose. But my view has always been, who doesn't get picked on the second grade playground?
Right, yeah.
The low-hanging fruit was the small eyes and the, flat nose. So, I don't think it really affected me. And that's obviously a fortunate story. I've met all kinds of adoptees and folks that are minorities that have been treated much poorer than that. But for me, once again, it's just a very fortunate life. And I use that even today in my entertaining and my speaking. It's when I walk in a room, just like, was it your sister or cousin?
My cousin.
Your cousin, yeah, just like your cousin around here in the Midwest. When I walk in the room and then they hear my name is Mark J. Lindquist, a lot of times if I'm having coffee with someone I haven't met, I say, my name is Mark Lindquist. And they say, no, I'm you can't possibly be him, they don't match up the name with the face. And so to me, it's been a punchline. It's been a take it away from you before you can use it on me thing. And just a way that I've related with the entire world was, I'll be the first to crack an Asian joke, or I'll be the first to make fun of myself to show you that I don't take myself so seriously. And so, I guess it's being the only Asian person in the room or the only minority most of my life has really shaped my life, because it's the first thing you notice.
And it's great that it's in such a positive way. And like you said, not everyone has had that experience.
Yeah.
And so I think it's great that they can see you and reach out to you and be like, okay, so how can we change the narrative here and just kind of get to the point of where it's like, yeah, I'm 100% comfortable in who I am.
Yeah.
Like, this is me. This is the skin I'm in.
And I've met a lot of Korean adoptees. Even just met one the other day through another friend of mine who lives out in Maple Grove. And, I think of Maple Grove as a kid from outstate Minnesota as this big city.
Right. It's got Dave & Buster's.
That's huge, right? That is a big city. That is for real. If you go to Walmart, you're a big place. So, but he was saying the same thing, that his experience growing up as one of the only minorities, even in a town of Maple Grove, I thought there might have been more diversity, closer to the Twin Cities, but in his case, no. But it was crazy as we talked and got to know each other. The tracks of life were almost completely parallel. They just almost mirrored one another, about how we related to other, folks, and how we broke down barriers, and how we would be the first to crack the joke. And, not to get too serious here on you, but I've been thinking a lot about that this last year, with the murder of George Floyd and the racial reckoning that we've all been through in the summer of protest, and I think back to a time when I was giving a speech out for AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps is like a domestic version of the Peace Corps. It was out in Wisconsin, and 90% of the room was white, and 10% of the room was black or one Filipino and a couple of the racial minorities. And I was cracking my Asian jokes. I show my I'm Asian license plate. I do my thing, and that gig had killed. at 400 gigs all over America. You know, it's how I break down the barriers and win the audience over. And right after that 12-minute intro, 30 people walked out. And I thought it was just, you know, you're doing live gigs, JJ, and you know how it is. Sometimes, you know, maybe they got to go fly out of Madison and they, you know, they've got a bus to catch or something. And so a lot of times people will get up and, you know, they'll mill around or they got to go do something. Well, these people had walked out, all the minorities in the room, because to them, they didn't want race to be used as a punchline.
Sure.
And it hurt them that I was doing so. And for the first time in 37 years, I was hit with that reality of, wow, this is how you've related to race in your life. But that's not the story of every American or every person on planet Earth. And so I guess I'm just trying to be more cognizant of it. May I make the same entertainment decisions in the future? I don't know. But I'm certainly thinking about it more. And so once again, it just gives me a little bit more gratitude about how my life went.
Yeah. So like as an entertainer then, when you're making faced choices like that, because I haven't done enough of the kind of entertaining where I felt like I'm really making a choice to go out on a limb here for something. I've never really done anything that would really maybe even go, I don't know how the audience is going to necessarily take this. So regardless whether it's about race or anything else, do you feel like, do you still lead from the question of, am I entertained by this and therefore I'm doing it? Or do you feel more now like I really have to be conscious of whoever it is I'm performing for and like tailoring whatever it is I'm doing to that group?
I'll answer it this way. Great question. My process has always been more like a stand-up comedian where you'll test different bits, right? You'll test it one-on-one with Coffee with JJ. You'll test it over the phone with a buddy. And then I'll see. You know, that'll be my proving grounds. That'll be my version of going to Enid, Oklahoma and doing a dive bar in front of 28 people and testing jokes, right? And so, you know, if I can get a guy to smile after I'm just saying a certain phrase or thing, then I'll think it's good for the live stage.
Got it.
I guess that's how I get there to decide whether or not what I'm doing on stage in front of a paid gig is going to be okay.
Right.
And now, having been through the pandemic, I haven't done a live event since March 12th of last year. I have a lot of these questions. I have my first live gig for a group of blue-collar trucking folks here in Fargo in a couple of weeks. Typically, in front of the blue-collar audience, the first thing out of my mouth, I go heavy on the Asian jokes, right?
Well, and you're getting ahead of it, right? You're telling them, like, listen, I am giving you permission to laugh about this.
Yes.
I'm acknowledging the fact that, yes, I am Asian. I know that's what you're thinking right now. And you can laugh along with me on this.
And isn't that what you use in comedy? In improv, it's take the elephant out of, or talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah, you know, I'm a white guy from the Midwest, right? So this last year has completely changed the way I think about some things because I realized, like, gosh, I take other cultures and spin it into improv gold. Yeah. But I'm not, I need to step back from that and really take stock and be like, no, I'm not allowed to do that. So for example, there's an Australian improv troupe that was really popular in Las Vegas for a while. Yeah. And I learned an amazing game from them where they have people just shout out accents. Okay. And so they're like, you know, Asian, Southern, Australian. And then they write these down and a scene starts going and then someone goes bing and then says one of the accents and then they have to continue the scene trying to use that accent.
Sure.
And so, you know, if it's Southern and you're doing a scene about a husband and wife who are divorcing and now you're trying to use the Southern drawl while you're doing it and the game just crushes. Yeah. It's funny every single time you do it because a lot of people can start like an Irish accent, but then it turns into sort of this gobbledygook melting pot of the world accent. You can't do that anymore. Sure. You just can't do that anymore because people are saying like, no, I am done because I'm not here. No one yells out white as an accent, right? No one yells out Caucasian. And to me, that says something. And it sort of says like, my time now is having to adapt in what I do. That being said, you have a great ability now to help let people know, like, I want everyone to be at ease. Like, to me, sitting and listening to that intro puts me more at ease in what I'm about to do, so that I don't sit here feeling uncomfortable being like, should I be making eye contact with him right now, or what I'm going to do? And like,
I think if anything, it's almost like you're letting people know, hey, you don't have to walk on eggshells around me.
Yeah.
If anything,
that's my intention.
It's more like, listen, I'm chill. I think one thing that everyone has struggled, certainly in the comedy scene over the past couple of years, is whether or not it matters if someone in the audience is offended versus are you doing something that is truly offensive? Are you doing something with ill intent, or like, even if you had made a joke, and this is an extreme hypothetical example, so I'm really testing the boundaries of this, but if you had made a joke about Kleenex and there's a chance that someone could be offended by that.
My father's killed by Kleenex.
Right. And while the goal is not to make that person feel bad, the goal is not to make that person in pain, but it's also not your job to constantly police everything that you say in the hopes that the person who hears what you say won't take it on bad faith. And it doesn't mean you can't say the wrong thing, but what is true is that if you say something that offends someone, people will now let you know. And they'll let you know in such groups that it actually could affect your livelihood. And so, but there's a million swings in a million different directions about that too. What I've tried to take as my lesson, one of the many lessons over this past year of racial reckoning, is to go, just what do you take for granted, dude? What do I, as a person just moving about the world about race, that I just take for granted? And what perspectives am I not even attempting to put myself in?
Yeah.
Because I'll never know what it feels like to be Black in America, but I can also do my best to not ignore what it is like to be Black in America, right? And at the same time, if I were a famous comedian going on stage who's known for saying insensitive things, I hope I wouldn't lean away from doing that, and understand that, at the same time, I want people to both be taken care of, but I also want a comedy club to be a place where you can say whatever you want.
Right.
At the same time.
I think comedy is one of the easiest ways to heal too. I think comedy and humor is very, very important. And so, I think of like, if you ever pick up a copy of The Onion, the first issue after 9/11, they said, listen, we're not going to shy away from the fact that, like, we cover national news, international news, and we're going to make sure that people get our feeling, because you had so many people who are sitting looking at a computer monitor or a television monitor going like, holy shit. And they're like, yep, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to grab that mentality, and we're going to say some of the things that people are thinking and worried about. And we're going to remind them that it's okay to laugh in this situation. Laughter is important. Laughter is really important.
And I wonder, well, I'm even, as we're talking about it now, I'm struggling with what decisions will be in the future as an entertainer and a performer. And I consider myself 1/3 stand-up comedian, 1/3 entertainer, 1/3 motivational speaker. That's how I make a living, is in motivational speaking. And so part of my thought, and tell me what you think about this, is like, I don't know if I should take down one of the promo videos on my motivational speaking website because it has reference to my Asian race. And it's a laugh line, and I deliver the laugh line, and then it shows the audience doubling over in laughter, and I'm laughing. And it's, I've always figured that if you can get people to laugh during a motivational speaker promo video, you win. And so I know it has gotten me a business and attracted people to me because of my sense of humor, right? And so what I'm hoping in the future, post George Floyd, post 2020, is that it would allow me to be, this sounds selfish, but at the center of this conversation, because maybe I have something to say about this that's a little more thoughtful than just, a tweet that came off the top of my head. I've been wrestling with these ideas, and obviously I'm aware of these decisions that I make to use race as a punchline. And so hopefully people will listen long enough to hear that I'm trying to learn. And isn't that what we could all do today?
By any chance, did either of you see the movie Minari? So
No.
it's at the time we're recording this, it's up for Best Picture for the Academy Awards. I hope it wins Best Picture.
Sure.
It's a story about the American dream, and here's what's amazing, and it's great that you're on this episode too. That I can push this. It is about a first generation American family whose parents are from Korea.
I've seen the promos for this.
Yep.
It looks fantastic.
So this son or this husband and wife moved from Los Angeles to Kansas, and he wants to grow Korean vegetables. He wants to like essentially open a farm that grows Korean vegetables so that he can sell them to restaurants across the country.
Totally.
And he they are, for lack of a better term, they are the first part of their family to consider themselves Americans, but they're also Koreans, right?
Yeah.
And so what's amazing is like at one point they bring a grandmother who doesn't speak any English to live with them. It's about the friggin' American dream.
Yeah.
But it's not the story of like a white family moving to Kansas. It is a story
It's
about
the immigrant
struggling.
story, which is the American story.
But that's the thing. It's not the immigrant story though.
Okay.
That's what I love about it. It's not about people from another country making it in America. These are Americans. And they don't look like what you consider like the American story to be. And that's what I love the most about it is their heritage plays a part, but it's not the sole focus of what's going on. The focus is these are people who are trying to like live their dream, and they're Americans. And so if you went into this movie hearing like it's the American dream, it's people who want to start a farm in Kansas.
Yeah.
You probably go in thinking like, all right, I'm gonna watch like a white family, and they're gonna be in Kansas, and they're gonna click their heels 3 times, and that's not what you get. And to me, that is what makes this partially so awesome. Secondly, amazing performances. The little boy in this movie is just out of this world, and I do hope that it wins Best Picture.
Yeah.
I think it's way better than almost anything else that was out this last year. Minari, highly recommended. Pay the $18 to rent it online.
I'm in.
Okay. I want to talk about some other stuff. We'll get back to race at one point.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry, I took it all in a serious nature, but
it is. This is part of your story, right?
Yeah, totally.
Hugely. So you also decided to serve your country, and I know that plays a huge role in your life.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your service?
Absolutely. And of course, it came from mom and dad. You learn from their example. Mom was a consummate volunteer in the community, whether it was the Girl Scouts, the church youth group, or just volunteering to help people, doing a fundraiser for the local family that needed medical bills help. And so mom's example, but then, of course, dad's Peace Corps service. And I honestly, in all the years and the great relationship that mom and dad and I have, I don't know if I've ever asked them or we've talked about, were they intentional about teaching Heidi and I to serve? But you just watch their example and you realize, oh, that's what the Lindquist family is about, right? And so it started off in high school, serving in the Key Club, the Kiwanis version, high school version of Kiwanis. And, so service really just was, I don't know, it's what we did. Of course you're going to volunteer and help out people and build Habitat for Humanity houses and raise money for folks. And so I guess I kind of caught the bug when I was in high school. Went off to Concordia College and started a community service club there and said, what am I paying $17,500 a year for hanging out with friends and not going to class? I made it to choir at 5 p.m. That was about it. That was an expensive choir class. But, so I said, forget it. And I wanted to follow in my father's footsteps, who had taken off in the middle of his University of Minnesota career to first go to Germany to see if he could hack it in overseas. And then after University of Minnesota, he graduated, he went to the Peace Corps. So I went off to AmeriCorps, went off to Washington, D.C. I was 19 years old and got to serve there for 2 years in a program where we did everything from building houses for Habitat, American Red Cross after 9/11, National Park Service, wildland firefighters, tutoring in inner city schools. Unbelievable experience. That was the formative experience of my life, age 19 and 20. Then worked for a playground building nonprofit and built playgrounds in every major city in America. Including Fergus Falls, Minnesota, if we call that a major city, right?
Shout out.
Take a quick break, go to Mabel Murphy's.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. And so, and then came back here to Fargo and did nothing of any consequence or any value event to anybody for 2 or 3 years.
Oh, you need a break. You did a lot.
Yeah, right. And so then I enlisted in 2006 when I was age 26, kind of late, for a traditional enlistment. And so enlisted for 6 years in the United States Air Force, and really just kind of hit my stride. Your late 20s, your early 30s, you're figuring out life. You're not the newest kid on the block anymore. They sent me to Hickam Air Force Base in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Nice.
Which is not so bad, right?
Yeah.
Well, my other basic training buddies went to Minot. And we love Minot, though. We love Minot.
Yep.
But in the military, of course, it's not the most popular place to go, especially when I got to go to Hickam. And so 5 years on Hickam, and I mean, my military career was storied. Top secret security clearance with NSA, worked in the same building that Edward Snowden worked in. I didn't know him. And then I got to go on a Bob Hope World Tour, like a USO show. I auditioned for a special duty, and we got to be second in command on a 34-member team that toured all over the world. I was an MC, I was a lead vocalist, I was a soloist, and I played William Hung on stage. And we did 124 shows in 22 countries and 38 states, entertaining 250,000 troops and their families, twice to the desert, Christmas Eve at Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan. And that was the last year of my military career. So really, after Hickam, then that, got out of the military and said, how the heck do I top that? Sponsored by Coca-Cola and Dell, you were a world touring entertainer and you had no business being a world touring entertainer, right? But, they just took amateur performers from the Air Force ranks. I came back here to Fargo and said, well, I caught the bug. That was awesome. And I promised my buddies on a return trip from Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan on the C-17, I made a promise to my buddies, like in the movies, you do a pinky swear, you clink the glasses and you say, this is not going to be our last world tour. I don't know how we're going to figure this out on our own, but it's not. And so I started speaking. I brought to the table what I thought I could bring and started telling stories from all these journeys. And launched a motivational speaking career in 2014. And luckily, about 5 years later, I was speaking all over the country.
Okay, hold on. You left out a huge part of this whole thing.
Tell me.
The first time I got to see Mark perform was at the Fargo Theater, where he was billed as the Asian Sinatra.
See, it's been my whole life, man.
This dude has a full big band behind him.
Wow.
And Sinatra's king, but you're the prince. Like you're right there next to him. It was easily one of the most entertaining shows I've ever been to in my entire life because Mark has this amazing energy, and you can feel it, like even as he's talking right now. It's hard to not be infected by the amazing passion you have and what you talk about. And you can see that on stage. And that was one of the most wild, most fun shows I have ever been to in my life. And I'm kind of mad that you haven't done another one in recent memory. That
we had
being
a
said,
lockdown for COVID for the past year, JJ.
but you've been working on stuff the whole time. You could have zoomed the show. And every time I see Mark, I'm always like, well, let's get another concert. I want another concert to get going.
Yes, let's start planning it again, for sure. That was 2015.
And so, let's see, what year? Must have been 2018. Linebenders get booked by the Heat Transfer Warehouse folks.
Yes.
And we're doing a show
Huge gig.
It was big. They had a giant Jumbotron screen, and it was over at the Avalon Event Center.
Yes, I remember.
And so we walk in, and they said, well, we've got a speaker who's going to be before you guys. And so I was like, oh, great. Like, they're going to have some, like, stuff shirt, and we're going to have to win the audience back. I mean, could you imagine? It's like, be like, and then this year's fiscal responsibility on the PowerPoint.
And now the light benders.
Yeah, now
Doing some stand-up comedy tours.
Completely clean. If anyone needs to use the restroom. So we show up.
Drink tickets are valid for another 30 minutes. 30 minutes.
Mark turns out to be the speaker, and it's easily the most teed up I've ever had a show.
Really?
Nice.
Yeah, because
I guess I haven't talked to you after that about that.
Well, because you got a great energy, and you bring a great energy to the group. In fact, I mean, you could just keep giving me more of your sloppy seconds as far as gigs where they're like, listen, I can give you 90 minutes, and if you need the other hour, like, call the line benders. They'll take care of it.
We only follow Mark now. That's the only show we do.
For you any day, brother.
Yeah. But it was really fun to share the bill with you in that occasion because I've known you now and I consider you a friend, and it's grown and grown and grown. And you, beyond that, out of all the guests we've had so far, you, my friend, have performed in front of more people than anybody else. And we've had, people who've been on major network television shows on this podcast. But the thing that most people across the globe know Mark for is for performing the national anthem, unlike anybody else. And can we go through some of the opportunities that you've had?
It has been a ride ever since Ortonville High School junior year when the coach I'm not an athlete, not even close. And so he dubbed me the football team's good luck charm. And so that was as close to football glory as I could get. Also forgot the words to the national anthem once there. A cappella 50-yard line.
Were they a little forgiving?
Dad was so nice. I can't. You're a 16-year-old kid, and you're demoralized for embarrassing yourself, your country, your family, and your legacy in a small town.
But are we going to get ice cream, Dad?
and so Dad, when I'm weeping on the farm, I'm pissed, whatever. He says, "You know what, Mark? This is Gordon Lindquist, classic, just good-hearted man." He says, "You know what, Mark? I think a semi-truck went by about when you forgot the words and hit his Jake brake, so I bet nobody heard it." And I was like, "Oh, Dad, you're like the nicest dude ever." And so, singing the national anthem has been my thing since 1997, right? It was just always my favorite song to sing for some of the reasons that I, mentioned before. Just being so darn proud to be here and get the life that I have. And so then, you would sing it as a hobby throughout life and, for the occasional basketball game, if you were, in touch with the coach's, son or something. And so when I got to the military, that became my gig because, you could either sit in the SCIF, the sensitive compartmented, information facility. It's been too long since I've been in the military. And study your butt off doing that. Or you could get in your dress blues and you could schmooze with the colonel and the command chief singing the national anthem. It'd be a little famous for a day.
There might be some shrimp cocktail in it for you too, right?
Absolutely, right? And so you're doing that every time you can. And so you got to do it for the military all over the globe. Got out of the military and I just said, well, why wouldn't I do it again? Remember, military retirements and change of commands and promotions and recognitions, they're 30, 40, 50 people, maybe 60 at tops, right? Yeah. Every once in a while you do it for the whole base and there's 200. But I got out of the military, moved to Fargo, maybe about the time that I met you or a little bit before or after, and I auditioned for the Fargo Moorhead Redhawks. And the sequence goes like this. Probably 2013, I auditioned for the Redhawks up at Newman Outdoor in Fargo. A guy named, I want to say his name was Jake, knew a guy named Alex at the University of North Dakota. And they must have been talking over beers. And Alex said, a good anthem singer. And I don't think his name is Jake. We'll call him Jake. Jake, the guy from State Farm.
Good old Jake from State Farm.
It led up to an Alaris Center football game in University of North Dakota. Then they got me for men's hockey up at the Ralph, which around here, big deal. Mm-hmm. National champion and 12,000 people in an arena. And so that was the biggest crowd I'd ever performed for, 12,000 people. Once I got that gig, I said, wow. The University of North Dakota men's hockey team is perennially, is that a word? Perennially?
Yeah.
It is a word, but I don't know how to use it correctly.
I think it is mostly for hostas, but
it's definitely a word though. But I think you're using it correctly.
I use these words for a living.
Penultimate? Is that what we're trying to go for?
Yes, maybe an antithesis. I don't know. Throw another one out.
The immaculate.
And so I was like, this is a big team. And so I said, well, if I could do it for 12,000, maybe I could do it for bigger. So I drew an 8-hour circle around Fargo. I said, who's out there? Timberwolves, Lynx, Vikings, Twins, College World Series. Oh, down in Omaha. And so I just sent YouTube videos, of the Alaris Center gig to those teams. And wouldn't you know, you got the College World Series. You got a 4th of July weekend against the New York Yankees down at the Twins. And then on a whim, got a Minnesota Vikings game for the 200th anniversary of the Star Spangled Banner.
Nice.
That was on CBS Sports for 17 million people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it was like, okay, if I could do the Twins, the Vikings, and the College World Series, what if I could do it like for real? And you got to know, nobody has a goal to be a professional national anthem singer. That is not a thing. It does not exist because the gigs don't pay. because I auditioned for the
It's the
Cleveland.
professional part that's difficult.
Yeah, you are an anthem singer, and nobody tries to do it for a career.
Right. Roseanne tried once, didn't work out, and so
really
she stuck to what she was doing.
Really bummed, right?
Yeah.
And so I was auditioning out in Cleveland Cavaliers when LeBron was there, and it was an open call audition Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Well, think about it. An NBA season is what, 42 home games or 41 home games?
You're asking the wrong people, by the way.
Oh,
We're like,
yeah,
that sounds about right.
Yeah, no, I know.
I'm sure it's not 43.
UFC definitely does a pay-per-view once a month. I know
There you
that
go,
much,
right?
but beyond
the sports
that.
ball, yes.
Yeah.
So they do the sports ball 41 times at home.
Okay.
And so you're auditioning for what? 30 slots because they're going to bring some of their own favorites back, etc., and book a big singer every once in a while. 9,000 people showed up that day. They didn't get done until like midnight after 1 a.m. And so the point is, as soon as I tell them you got to pay me a fee, you got to do this, you got to treat me like this, they say, forget about it. I got 8,999 other people that'll go do that for free. So that's why they don't pay. And so I totally get it. And I also wouldn't feel good about making money off the national anthem anyway. So, all that to say, you don't see people who do it consistently or often around the country, simply because it's not, like you said, it's not a career. Luckily, I'm already traveling all over the country as a motivational speaker, doing 100 gigs a year in all these cities. So it's no big deal for me to just stop in another city and make that happen. And so what an honor to be able to people think, I don't know what they think, but, I went out and got them. I would send my audition videos to every single NFL team after the schedule would come out in April. And I would say, I'm an anthem singer and I can wear the uniform of the U.S. Air Force, and I can also time it to a fighter jet flyover.
Nice.
Right? Of all the random skills to try to perfect in one's life that doesn't probably get you anywhere is I can sing the national anthem in 83 seconds exactly, right? And it's not rocket science. You just make sure you're at 21 seconds at the gleaming, you're at 41 seconds at streaming, and you're at a minute at flag, right? That's all you do. And you got a watch on your wrist, on your mic hand, and you rehearse that. And so I can tell the fighter jet or the pilots or the ground controllers, because I knew the Air Force lingo, I know who to talk to. And so I could tell them, from the time that they say the last word of my intro, Lindquist, add 5 seconds for a breath and a pitch from the pitch pipe. From there, 88 seconds later, I will be singing the word brave, right? Land of the free, the home of the brave. People don't think about this, but next time you're at a big stadium and they have a flyover after the anthem, usually that baby doesn't come over right after the song is ended. Mm-hmm. It takes some precision. And 99 times out of 100, it's the singer's fault, right? Think about it. It's the U.S. military. They're going to be bombs on target at the exact time they're supposed to be there. But there's a variable, which is the length of the song.
Yeah.
And so I just, I try to find an edge in everything I do. And that was my edge, is if I could be the Air Force guy who could time it perfectly. The producers of the NFL events that do it for TV, they want it in under 90 seconds because of commercials, and they want it to be done precisely because they want that visual of last note of the song, everybody's going crazy anyway, and all of a sudden, the fighter jets come over. I became known for doing that. So when the NFL would do their planning meetings off season, they'd talk about this crazy kid who did it and nailed it.
Nice.
And everybody questioned me the first time I went out. The Chicago Bears production team said, this friggin' guy, no way. They thought I was too cocky. And sure enough, I nailed it. And exactly the time that so that word would get around. And so made it to Thursday Night Football, made it with the Pittsburgh Steelers, made it to Sunday Night Football with the Philadelphia Eagles, then eventually culminating in 2019 with the Monday Night Football at San Francisco 49ers. Both teams were undefeated at the time, I do believe, Seattle Seahawks. And so it was like, my dream has always been to sing the national anthem at the Super Bowl ever since I was that junior in high school. When I was back in high school, I had 3 goals in life. Sing the national anthem at the Super Bowl, become a ballpark vendor, and start the wave at a major stadium.
Nice.
Right?
Dang.
Are we at 2 out of 3?
I'm at 1 out of 3. I've started a wave at Camden Yards.
Okay.
I need to be a ballpark vendor. I hope the Red Hawks can hook me up.
Dude, you could hawk some peanuts like there's no
God.
tomorrow.
Peanut sales would go through the roof that day.
Right? I always thought I'd be really good at it. But here's the problem, though. I want to be the showman, and there'd have to be like the money guy who's behind me, and I'm like, peanuts, who wants their peanuts? Yeah, yep, two. And then it'd be over the top, and then I would keep moving, and then my assistant would have to be like, that'll be $10.
Okay. Wow. I feel like now I should give you some commission or something like that for that.
Right.
But then also I think there's going to be need to be an EMT because I'm going to ask the people to throw peanuts back at me and I'll catch them in my mouth.
I would love to see the two of you compete and see who can get the best sales in the show.
It is going to happen.
But I don't think you get an assistant though, JJ, because he's not going to have an assistant.
Done. I got it.
You got to do it straight up.
I got these long ass legs. I can go over seats. Like I'm ready for this.
This dude sings national anthems in ballparks, though, dude. Like, I don't know, man.
I mean,
let me ask you this though: who are you going to buy cotton candy from?
This is a great idea.
Are you going to buy cotton candy from the slim Asian guy or from the chubby white guy?
Well, wait.
The chubby white guy clearly has tested the product.
No, I don't want to know how much of the product you've been testing. I'm looking for pageantry at this moment.
Okay.
Wow, this is going to be great.
I really am.
And I'm not kidding. We got to hook this up.
I think this would be fun.
We got to do this for sure.
We'll call Carl right after this and be like, dude,
come on, Carl.
Here we go.
This could be an event that day at the Red Hawks, I think.
Yeah.
For sure.
And we sell peanuts. My peanuts will go to one charity. Your peanuts go to another charity.
Yes,
yeah,
I like
so
it.
it's easy.
So I don't think this gets me anything, but my dad is Ole with the Red Hawks.
No way! Oh my goodness! Yes, of course.
So I'll be like, "Hey, Dad, does Ole have no? Well, can we get any pull at no? Okay.
Okay.
Who should we talk to at the Red Hawks then, Dad? That will help us get this to happen."
But Ole is, like backstage underneath this, like he could maybe throw this
potentially,
right?
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking is like he's the inside horse, right?
For
like,
JJ versus Mark Day.
Okay, I'll sing the anthem. And you sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," seventh inning stretch. So fair playing field.
Have you heard him sing?
I'm not a singer. I am not a singer.
Will you give us "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" right now?
Can I do it as Harry Carey? Because that's what I want to do. Like, yes, everybody, let's sing one of my favorites. Take me out to the ball game. Let's hear you in section G. So I think that I could go with it. Well, and you know who else? Jack Michaels would help us.
Oh
no
my gosh,
problem.
Jack would definitely help us.
We've got.
Here's the
got it
problem.
going.
I feel like innings 1 through 3, I'm a lock. I feel like innings 7, 8, and 9, he might be a lock.
But it depends on, has it been hot out? Because if he wilts after about 3 or 4 hours
That's
or so.
Like no one wants to buy from the flop sweat guy.
But versus you seem like someone who is very energized by being in that environment entirely.
Yeah.
Like I am at my place. I'm at a baseball stadium right now or a football stadium. Whereas JJ does great in crowds, but if there's not a musical number happening on stage after a bit and there's not fruity beer to buy, he sort of goes and wants to watch Sex in the City.
I don't think that I don't need the stamina to last the entire game. What I need is to really push. You think you're the top of the show is your thing. If I can upsell, like if we get to like the 4th inning, let's say, and then I throw it into high gear and it's just upsell. It's I'm going out there and I'm like. Be like, oh, look at these two. Are you guys here on a date? No, your brother and sister, brother by sister, some peanuts.
I see what he did.
Like,
so what are you guys selling then? Are you guys selling peanuts specifically?
I mean, what is your dream been?
I think
for
it has to be the same food. I think it has to be as even of a playing ground as we can make.
I feel like
playing field, not playing ground.
We could go beer.
Yeah,
that could be interesting.
How's your back? I got a bad back. And beer's heavy.
This is where I want the assistant.
I think you need something that you can toss without feeling like you're going to hurt somebody.
It's peanuts.
We're
definitely
peanuts.
going to peanuts. Yeah.
And I bet we can get that sponsored too. I bet we can call up one of these guys and be like, listen, you give us 60 boxes.
Yes.
And whatever we sell, we get to keep, and you get to be the great peanut people.
Peanuts is the one thing I always get when I go to a ball game. I always get peanuts. I just feel like I have to.
It's like the Americana, the thing you got to do.
That you're allowed, you just drop it right there.
Right.
That's awesome.
An irresponsible moment as an adult.
Yep.
That nobody judges you for.
It's totally cool. You should do that. What are you doing throwing that away? Throw that on the ground, man. What are you doing?
You do look at people weird. You're like,
yeah.
Don't you know you could have?
This isn't the theater.
You know
the best idea ever heard.
You're a man of the world. Have you tried boiled peanuts? It's a Southern thing. It's a really popular Southern thing.
I have not actually tried.
I have. I'll give it a 2.
Me too. Because when you want a peanut, you want it salty, right?
Yes.
Boiled peanuts lose the salty
and a little mushy.
Feel. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
sorry,
backwards.
Sal.
And then the people who put peanuts in their Coca-Cola, that's weird too.
I'm half.
I know about those people.
Yeah, it's so weird. I'm half Southern, and I reject that side of my family. I really do.
Oh, it's in your family.
I'm half Southern, and I don't understand half the things those people do. I really don't. Every soda is a Coke for some reason. It's so stupid. Everyone's hun. Hey, hun.
They don't call it hot dish. I mean, they're off their rocker.
Yeah, that's why they lost the Civil War.
Now,
They're backwards people.
if this works out well at the Red Hawks, I think the next big step for us would be to take it to a non-traditional sporting event and see how we can do in a place where peanuts are foreign. So, for example, like, how are we doing at a high school tennis match? You know,
This guy's just showing selling peanuts out of nowhere.
And we have
two bags.
We have to keep the same format. I'll sing the national anthem. You'll sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game."
Be like, this is high school lacrosse.
Sir, this is a bowling tournament.
Sir, usually at the chess match we don't have this much noise.
I'm going to ask your permission to use one of the amazing photos from your social media for the thumbnail for this. Usually I never micromanage Tucker on the thumbnail, but
That's fine. I'm down.
Seeing a picture of Mark on the field at one of these football games with the crowd behind him and the flag, it is the most patriotic you're going to feel in your life. And you can see the pure joy in Mark's eyes as well during that. And so I loved every time that he would, he's trying to send you his phone.
Oh,
he wants you to look at the photo here. It is, it is
an awesome photo.
Inspiring. So here's the other thing I like about the national anthem too. When you sing the national anthem, no other performer gets the same attention as someone who's performing the national anthem. So you go to a Taylor Swift concert and there's a ton of people and they're stoked and they're excited and they're making a noise, but there's also some guy on his phone being like, I don't know, I'm watching my daughter at a Taylor Swift concert.
And then he's like, oh, hold on 1 second.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
But for the national anthem, you command a crowd of people who become silent and go through an emotional journey during the national anthem. I mean, I've heard it so many times and it still gets me every single time. And it's a shared experience.
Yeah.
Do you also do O Canada?
I do.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yes.
Now,
you must be versatile.
Right. So that's got to be an ask, right? Like that's got to be something.
That is a true national anthem singer right there. Someone who's like, yes, the United States one, but not just the United States.
Right.
There are more than one national anthem in this world.
Well,
that's
because
fantastic.
If you're singing for the Red Hawks, the Winnipeg Gold Eyes might come down,
absolutely.
right?
Yes.
And you want to honor that team as well from their country of origin.
And that's the first place I learned it was for the Fargo-Moorhead Red Hawks because of the Winnipeg Golden Eyes. I just reviewed, I was going through some old pictures and stuff. The Florida Panthers had me audition for a game, NHL, back in 2002. You know, so this is the AmeriCorps days. Building a house for Habitat for Humanity down there. And I auditioned for that night's game. National anthem flawless. And then I got to the O Canada, which I had to learn the day before because I didn't know it back when I was 20 years old. I sang, it's God keep our land, right?
Something
and I sang God save our land.
Oh.
And they figured that the beer cans would fly. So there again, like I never made that mistake again.
Yeah.
So I've always, had a lyric card in my pocket. I've always, because it's like
our national anthem wrong. Throw beer at him.
Right. You know what? Hockey fans are nuts. And so
That's true.
You don't want an international incident, right? And so one thing that people may not know that I'll reveal here on this podcast is I have a lyric card on my finger when I sing the national anthem.
Really?
That I have been wearing for probably 4 million people.
On your finger?
And so this is something I did at the UPS store on 32nd Avenue out of packing tape and laminate paper.
That's fascinating.
Oh my gosh.
0.4 font. And it has, "Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's light," all the way down to "Home of the Brave." And so when I'm holding my microphone out there at the 50-yard line.
Oh, my gosh.
Then, you see artists look down at the mic for some reason or close their eyes all the time. And you can't see that oh, man, is it gleaming or streaming? Oh, it's gleaming. Right? And this has been on national TV with a close-up and the whole thing. One friend ever asked me, "What's that thing on your finger?"
That's brilliant.
So this is my insurance policy to big organizations like the NFL that your guy is not going to mess it up.
Wow.
Right?
That's brilliant. That's brilliant right there.
Well, it was born out of the embarrassment I felt as a junior in high school.
I mean, isn't
Most
it
worthy inventions are, though, aren't
Right?
they?
Necessity is the mother of all invention,
Yes.
You know, it's shorter than Green Eggs and Ham, our national anthem.
Yeah.
But yet when you're up there and you have that moment of you go like, and you could have sang that thing 1,000 times.
1,000.
And it's still, the energy that you feel and the rush of the crowd and the heat in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
That means that you are a total and complete professional. I am amazed at that.
But I thank you very much. It's very kind. But I can't tell you how many times at the Ralph, because I used to do full-time at the Ralph Engelstad Arena for the men's hockey team. I did it for 4 years. So that means every other weekend, you're up there twice a weekend. And I can't tell you how many times I did ask the production assistant, did I sing that right? Because, we all have, you and I could sing it 1,000 times in a row with no pressure beginning to end. But as soon as you're a cappella, as soon as you, are on a big sound system that has some reverb, sometimes your brain just doesn't work right, because that was written in 1814 by Francis Scott Key in this old English that we don't speak in, these days. And so if Christina Aguilera can do it at the Super Bowl and mess it up, I'm not immune, right? So
I've had to sing it once. I sang the national anthem before the North Dakota Apartment Wrestling Federation's match.
Wow.
Yep, and I had to do it in character. I played a character named Scotty Rabidowitz, who used to be like an old school 80s wrestling promoter. Yeah. And so they're like, would you sing the national anthem? And they're like, we're going to have a full color guard and everything like that. And I have never felt as much pressure in my entire life. It is daunting. And so for you to be so awesome at it, and to be someone who takes it so seriously too, because that's the other thing, right? So you could be a multi-platinum winning artist with millions in the bank, and they ask you to sing the national anthem, and if you don't give it your all, your career can change instantly.
Yeah. That's why many of the pro singers, and the ones that you would be surprised, will not do it.
Won't even touch it.
It's too high risk, low reward.
Yeah.
And so did you guys see you said you're not sports guys, but at the
sports bloopers, you betcha.
but you'll be maybe interested in this. So it's a little bit of sports betting, okay? And so
sports
there's
betting
always,
I am into.
Right. There's always prop bets.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Will the guy streak during the Super Bowl? Which, by the way, that was genius. Yeah. The way that guy did that, right? So they were rehearsing, and I don't know if it was Luke Bryan or someone did at the Super Bowl this last year, but it's an outdoor stadium in Tampa. So there was a guy with the iPhone outside the stadium timing the national anthem, because there's always an over-under on whether it's too short or too long.
Absolutely.
Right? And
I did not know that.
I don't know. I mean, I hope Vegas and the Westgate folks never see this. So I hope they don't listen to your podcast, because here's what I'm going to do. The time the Cleveland Indians were on the march to the World Series, I sang for them that year on 9/11. And so I was one of their favorite singers. And they got in touch with me and said, if we make it to the World Series, you're going to sing for a home game.
Sweet.
And I told my friends immediately, I said, do you think at the World Series there's a prop bet on the national anthem length? I will know exactly how long it's going to be. We will delete all of my national anthem from YouTube. Nobody will ever be able to know how long I sing it. And even if it is, over, I can just sing it 2 seconds faster, because that's what I do.
Yeah, really fix it. Yeah. That's hilarious.
So
that is hilarious.
let me talk to you about the 10 seconds after you finish the national anthem.
Yeah.
So there's a huge amount of applause, and they're not only applauding for you, but they're applauding for the flag. They're applauding for that moment. It is just, a huge, huge wrap up.
Yeah.
Do you stick around? Do you watch the game? How does it feel once your part of the event is done?
I don't know if you could feel any better. Luckily, the performances that I've turned in for the NFL, I don't remember one that I felt bad about. And so I could just enjoy the moment. You know how it is. You go on stage and you think you didn't do as well as you could have, and that taints the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But in those situations, I'm so prepared, I'm so amped up, I'm so proud. And afterward, the head coach usually comes up and shakes my hand, maybe a couple of the players. And then, you're wearing the Air Force uniform, and that's where I just get to see American citizens in action appreciating and loving the country. Because if you sing a good national anthem, you give them the goosebumps, right? And the most common compliment that I'll ever get is, thank you for singing the national anthem, quote unquote, the right way. You know, no frills. There's 101 notes in the national anthem. I sing 101 notes. There's pop singers that try to hit every note on the piano, and you don't even know it's the same song anymore. I just don't think that's the way it should be sung, or at least that's not how I was taught. And so, and obviously, I'll be honest with you, it's a little bit of ego too. You know, you got 70,000 people that see you in the concourse.
Baby,
And,
yeah, I
and
understand.
You're absolutely the guy who sang it because I was the Asian guy in the blue uniform. And so, you know, you'll sweat, you know, at the College World Series in June in Omaha wearing that uniform because to me, I'm still serving, right? It's kind of like I was a part of the Minnesota All-State Lutheran Choir when I was in high school. I traveled all over the state of Minnesota singing in this Lutheran choir. And Dr. Tom Rossen, the director, would tell us how to interact with the audience afterward. Because the little old ladies in blue hair would come up to you and say thank you, right? And so he expressed to us how important it is for that person to be able to say thank you. Right, that closes the loop. Right, it's not for ego. Right, it's still a service because they feel good to be able to talk to the performer that was up there. That's a moment they will remember, whether they know you or not. And so I've carried that with me in this performance too. That yes, like I said, for me, of course, it's a great ego stroke. Who wouldn't love performing in front of 70,000 people and knocking out of the park? But it is also to me that Dr. Tom Ross and Minnesota State Lutheran Choir service to the audience because I hear the stories of the service members who wore the same uniform that their son wore. I'm wearing the same uniform their son or their daughter wore. And they tell me these stories about their family members going off to deploy, etc. And it's like, I don't know if it's cathartic is the right word, but it certainly, I feel, closes the loop. You know, it becomes a memorable moment. I got to talk to the performer and I'm still serving in that moment, right? And so, and especially with the Colin Kaepernick kneeling thing, I got to hear the most interesting nuggets and how the country feels about it, right? And they Bleacher Report, you know, ESPN, they'd interview me afterwards about that because I was the singer at the game where the guys would kneel. What you don't hear in those reports is that the two people at the Miami Dolphins game right after the Colin Kaepernick, you know, dust up, the first two people to come up and say thank you for your service were the two people that were kneeling. You know, and I think more people know that a military veteran had advised Kaepernick on, you know, this isn't a respectful way to do it. You know, so I've always been honored to take part in the pre-game part of it, which is let them come up and talk to the performer. Yeah. You know, let them celebrate the anthem, because at that moment we weren't Republican or Democrat or independent or apathetic or anything. We were just Americans who got chills during the song.
I think of all the different times that art in any form has moved me to the point that I wish I could thank the performer or the artist. If I read a book and I was like, this book, I wish I could tell the author how much this meant to me. Right. So like those few moments in my life where I've approached a performer after performance to let them know, listen, and being people who've been on stage, we also appreciate exactly what it takes to actually go up there and do that. That's a very difficult thing to do. Sure. I've never done this, but I've wanted to, but I don't know how to ever do it. If I've ever seen a show where someone clearly made a mistake on stage, right? Maybe they flubbed up a lyric or something. I've always wanted to go and tell them, like, you still did awesome. Like, even though you messed up, I want you to understand that you still did fantastic. And that's not me trying to make you feel better about yourself. I've been there. And when I was in the 9th grade, we did a student-produced play of Clue, of the movie, which is a whole long story. But anyways, I had a door frame fall on my head in front of the entire 9th grade.
Oh my gosh.
Who all proceeded to laugh at me. 300 kids stood up and mocked me when it happened. But so I've been in that scenario where it's like, it sucks to make a mistake in front of people. It's embarrassing. Yeah. But then when you know that someone has lived through that and kept going, you have like a level of respect. And that's why I love stand-up comedians so much. Because like for a stand-up comedian, that's like the one art form, it seems, out of all of them that goes, you're going to have to stand up in front of groups of strangers and suck. Yeah. And you're going to have to live through that.
Yeah.
Because if you can live through that, that's something that's part of it, then everything else, you'll probably be okay. And other art forms, you'll fail in front of people, but it's not expected at the same level.
Right.
Right. So like, if you're a singer, you're going to mess up the words, or you're going to get a note wrong. Or if you're an actor in a play, you're going to get something wrong, or your pants are going to rip, or a door frame's going to fall on your head or something like that. So like someone who I've seen who goes on stage, messes up and then keeps going.
Sure.
I want to tell them, hey, awesome job. Good for you for doing that, because that's incredibly difficult to do.
Sure.
One of my favorite anecdotes, and I think that you're going to respond to this, is I listened to a podcast called the Tobolowski Files. Stephen Tobolowski, he's the guy who played the insurance salesman in Groundhog Day. He's been in about 1 million movies.
Yes.
Yeah. Trust me, Mark.
Single premium whole life.
Yes. Yes.
I highly suggest you start listening to his podcast. You're going to love it, because he tells stories about not only like making movies and stuff, but he's led just such an amazing, interesting life that he like shares amazing stories. But he has one where he says, this is something that I think about every single time I approach a role or a fan comes up to me. And he says, there was a famous conductor in Boston, and they were rehearsing a piece with the Boston Philharmonic.
Yeah.
And it's a piece they had done many, many times before, leading up to a Christmas concert. And he said everything was right, but it didn't sound passionate. Like, it didn't sound like it was something amazing. He stops everyone. He goes, ladies and gentlemen, I know that you've played this many, many times before, and I know that it's hard to create passion when it's something so familiar. But I want to talk to you about 2 people who will be in the audience tomorrow night at our show.
Yeah.
The first person is the one who's never heard the song performed live before. They've never been to a concert, and this is their first experience hearing this in their life.
Yeah.
And they'll keep this with them. And this is a special experience. So think about that person. I'd also like you to think of the person who's hearing this for the last time.
Yeah.
This is the last concert that they'll attend. They most likely don't know that, but you want to make sure that their last time hearing this piece is just as important as the first time they heard this piece. And so when Stephen Tobolowski talked about that, I was like, even right now, like, I've got goosebumps. I'm thinking like, that is such an amazing thought process. And there's no way to say this without an ego, but I like when I go out and I meet people after a show and they're nervous to meet me, I get embarrassed, because I'm like, dude, I'm just a guy. I put my pants on one leg at a time.
Right.
And I did a one-man show that Tucker directed at Theater B, and it was a holiday show. And usually when I've done a play, you're kind of expected to go out afterwards into the lobby and say hello to everyone, but you have your other castmates with you at the time, right? And so everyone else goes out there.
Not for a one-person show.
Not for a one-man show. It's me.
It's
solely.
the me show.
And that was the best-selling show we've ever done at B. So that was the biggest crowds we've ever had too, was having it in front of this kid.
And there were a couple nights where I thought, like, I'm just gonna stay in the dressing room, and like, let people leave, and then they'd come out and be like, there are people waiting in the lobby. You really should come out here. And
I love it.
Complete strangers. And the people who told me like that was so funny. And they wanted to tell me about something in the show that they connected with.
Yes.
And I really realized, like, I'm still on right now. Like, this is part of the show, is being able to have this, and I still need to continue to give it to them.
Yes.
Because you know what? They just gave me the opportunity to perform for them for 90 uninterrupted minutes. This is my opportunity to let them tell me what they liked about it.
Yeah.
I've only once had a person who's come up to me with the purpose of telling me I did not enjoy what I just saw. And he was
a beer,
I want more of that stuff to
Yeah.
happen. I'm like, sweet, tell me about it, man.
And it was the college theater professor at Valley City State University.
Oh my!
And it was after a line
Of
bender
course, it was
show.
a college theater professor.
Right. We performed we performed somewhere, and this guy sought me out afterwards when I worked at the Fargo Theater, and he was purchasing tickets. He's like, I know you from the line benders. And I was like, oh, that's great. What'd you think of the show? And he goes, well, you guys will get better.
Oh,
and I remember being like, okay. Yeah. And he goes, but don't stop trying.
Wow, I totally redeemed himself.
Right. And I remember at that point being
One
like,
day you might be as successful as me teaching theater at a college.
right. 3 sections a semester.
I don't have tenure yet, but one of these days.
But
One of these days.
I also think about the people who've been so generous to me over the years too. You know, we went to a show in Las Vegas. Do you want to take that?
No,
we can stop and take it if you want.
That was an alarm, not a phone call.
Oh, how do you know?
Way to go, iPhone user.
Because it went ding, 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 ding,
You can't have that for your phone? Your ringtone?
Who would?
Oh.
The only person I know who has terrible etiquette with that is my dad.
Yeah.
Because he uses cell phone rings as text tones and just lets them play out.
And they're so long.
Very long.
So long.
Yeah, especially in restaurants, he just lets it go. Anyways.
Sorry about that, guys.
So you're good. You're good.
I remember the people who have been generous with their time with me too, right? Because most importantly, I remember going in Las Vegas, we saw Drew Carey's Improv All-Stars. And so it was everyone from the show you could imagine, including like they brought the woman who played Mimi was there.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, like there's 12 people. And at one point, I was there with some of the other line benders. They had an audience volunteer part. And of course, all three of our arms go up.
Of course.
And previous guest Natalie Deutsch was chosen to come up on stage. So she goes up on stage and they're playing a game called Sound Effects, where two audience members are given microphones. They have to provide the sound effects for what's going on in the scene. And so Natalie is chosen to give Ryan Stiles his sound effects.
Oh, my goodness.
And so the other guy is a dud. The other dude they brought up isn't doing anything. And so they realize Natalie can handle this. And so at one point he goes, "There's gators down there." And he goes, "Let's bring a shotgun." And then he cocks a shotgun and she goes like, and he goes, "Nope, never mind. I want a lasso." And so she's, and he goes, "What about a power chainsaw?" And he goes, "Nope, back to the shotgun." And he goes, "What do you think about that, gator?" And she goes, "You bastard." And we call it the whistle line, the line that ends the scene where you kind of hit the crescendo. So Natalie provided the crescendo in that scene.
Nice.
So
I love it.
people were coming up to our table being like, "You guys are plants, right? Like she's part of the group." And we're like, "No, she's not." And so afterwards,
What
they
a great
all
compliment, though.
right?
Nice.
Isn't that a great compliment?
Totally.
They start kind of filtering into the lobby at the MGM. And Ryan Stiles comes out and he looks at Natalie and points at her and comes over to her and he's like,
"Shut up.
You did great. Thank you so much." And she's like, "You're so tall." And so and he gives us plenty of time. And then Chip Easton comes out and Chip Easton's like, "Oh, you guys are part of a comedy group? What's that?" And we're like, "We're the Line Benders." He goes, line benders. I like that. Line benders. And then he gets like 20 steps away and he yells back to us, "Line benders." And then we're like, "Oh my God, this is great." And then Drew Carey comes out and
No way.
It was a dream come true for people who grew up watching that show. And they didn't have to give us the time of day. They could have gone and went to a private VIP room, but probably 15 minutes. And then I think of your story with Larry the Cable Guy at the Fargo Theater. And I just think this is why he is a household name.
Right. And I was actually thinking today about how terrible my experience with Bruce Campbell was. And I was going to bring up, like, sometimes celebrities can't get it done. But yeah, Larry the Cable Guy actually did a really good job. He was just so nice because he waited until the last person was gone.
Very
so
cool.
Anyone who wanted an autograph or to
cool.
meet him. But for Bruce Campbell, it was just he was tired at that point. I was like one of the last fans to get a signing that day and had the absolute most worthless conversation with a human being I've ever had. Straight up, period. Because he's like signing autographs or whatever. And I'm waiting. And I can tell he's starting to lose steam because I was like, 2,000 or 3,000 number person to go through. This is at the Fargo Theater. I walk up to him and I can see him in his mind go like, "Bruce, just make a couple more. Just a couple more of these. You can do it. Make conversation with this kid." So I said, like, "Hey, thanks for coming to Fargo." And I hand him my book to sign. And he goes, "Yeah. So Marge, huh?" And he points at the Marge statue behind me. And I go, "Yep. Yeah, that's awesome." And he goes, "I wonder how they got it here." And I pause and I go, "Probably in a truck or something." And that was it. I walked away. That was my entire experience with Bruce Campbell.
Boo.
Yeah. So sometimes celebrities are great, but sometimes they suck. Steve Martin was the worst celebrity I ever met because he gave me like a limp-wristed handshake. I had just directed JJ in a play that he had written. Steve Martin had written, The Underpants. It was like the thing he had done. And I got a chance to meet him at a previous job out in Vegas.
Yeah.
And so I went up to shake his hand and it was like the most limpy, like he did not want to be approached by anybody. So I was
so sad.
I clearly was overstepping a line there too, but that was also pretty bad.
And to Bruce Campbell's credit, he did redeem himself by a friend of Tucker said, "Hey, I work at this all-night diner. You should stop by after the show." And then he did.
Yeah, I think he was just thinking about steak tips at that point when he was talking to me. He's like, I just want them steak tips.
It's delicious steak
Some
tips.
hash browns and steak tips and get
But
out of here.
Like he showed up and not with an entourage, by himself, and just hung out for a couple hours at this diner. And like was just like a total gentleman, and
But he has
they were
to
like,
best them of
Bruce
them.
Campbell loves pancakes.
And fucking talk about the Marge statue with them as well. That's my goal, is to become a celebrity, to be on a talk show one day next to Bruce Campbell. So we've met before, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And bring up that story. That's about it, though.
He's gonna love that one.
Oh, yeah.
He's gonna love it.
Once I'm famous and I can do that, finally.
Okay, so we're eating up more time than I swore that we were gonna get. So I want to make sure to get to this because you've had a very interesting year.
Yeah.
Things have changed drastically. So if you're a motivational speaker and you're used to being in front of gigantic crowds of people, and by the way, your motivational speeches are not just like, hey, you got to go to that break room and you got to look in that garbage. And if you see a cupcake wrapper, you got to know somebody's having a great day. Seek that person out.
I feel pretty motivated, actually, JJ.
Wow, I just got a new vignette.
Yeah.
That's
There
great.
you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Garbage talkers. But you're not the person who goes out and gives these cliched speeches and gives these things that are, like, here's the 5 things I want you to think about when you walk out of here today.
Sure.
It's real world, and it's interesting, and it's thoughtful, and I appreciate that. And no wonder companies not only ask you back time and time again, but they're like, hey man, listen, we had this speaker. You guys have got to get Mark J Lindquist. You got to get him out here for your next board meeting. You got to get him out here for your next employee conference. I mean, you get to talk to all, and what's also great too is you talk to all age ranges.
Totally. Yeah.
It's not like you only specialize in people like in business careers.
Left-handed plumbers, No,
Right.
I mean, like anybody, right?
They do need a lot of motivation, though.
So the pandemic hits, and then it's like, uh-oh, these things aren't going to happen. And if they do, they're happening only online now.
Right.
And I also can tell that you're the kind of guy who feeds off of a crowd energy.
Yes.
And so
That's
hard
huge.
to
That's
gauge
huge.
on Zoom.
Very hard, and especially when they turn the cameras off. So
Yeah.
you think about the trajectory of it. All of a sudden, obviously 2019. Well, not obviously, but it was the best year we'd had, and the biggest companies that we'd been in front of. I had just cracked, the Fortune 100 and the Starbucks and McDonald's and Walmart and all that, and I'm like, wow, this thing is actually working, and we're making an impact. And I had just gone to Vancouver and Toronto for a client, and then it was March 12th. That was the last gig. I flew home to Phoenix, Arizona. And then, of course, the CDC said on March 15th, no more live events over 50 people. 40 plus events come off my calendar. And what do you do? I mean, I don't know if there was an industry this past year during the pandemic that got hit harder than live events. You know that, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so it was obviously challenging for everybody around the globe. My personal story is this. You're quarantining in a 1-bedroom apartment, and a traveler like myself, a little bit bouncing off the walls. I said, forget this. I got to go. And so I bought a 33-foot RV online and drove to Atlanta to pick it up. Picked up a military buddy of mine, and because my thinking was, well, of course we haven't seen this for 100 years, but I'll bet we get our act together. And so I was thinking,
keep saying 2 weeks,
right? And I thought, well, maybe we'd be doing live events in the fall, and that's kind of what I bought the RV for, because at the time I was planning on doing the Sinatra Big Band. I'd really moved on to Phoenix with the goal of kind of ratcheting down the speaking business and ratcheting up the Bob Hope style USO 17-piece Sinatra style big band. I'd form a charity, or had formed a charity called Veteran Benefit Concerts. We were going to do the old Bob Hope thing again. Sure. And right as that was getting going, we were getting corporate sponsors when the pandemic hit. And so I still was holding on to that dream. I said, with the RV, we can still do a Southern United States tour of the big band, still raise money for veterans, support American Legions, VFWs, etc. But it just never came back, right? As you know, live events didn't. And so once I realized that in about the fall, all of my colleagues in the motivational speaking business in March and April and May were doing presentations on Zoom titled "How to Survive the Coronavirus Pandemic," "How to Thrive in a Pandemic," yada, yada, yada. And I was like, this is so disingenuous. You know, how do you know? You weren't there 100 years ago. You're making this crap up. And so I just didn't do any of that. You know, I gave a few of my speeches that I'd given before, but I was realizing, A, on Zoom and not a live audience, and B, a speech built for a different time and place, it just wasn't resonating. So I started to write, you know, and I started to write books. I wrote a book in about November, having lived through the pandemic. Oh my gosh, I got to do the math, you know, for 9 months. And I thought, well, you know, I am a motivator. I am a difference maker. I could help people during this pandemic because we've all had friends and maybe we were the same. You know, it was a rough year. Mental health, you know, and just hard to adapt to all this stuff. So I said, I've got to forge ahead and give the world something because I know that I could. So I wrote a little book. It was called it came out to be 10 Strategies to Get Yourself Out of the Pandemic Rut, right? So when you're writing a book called 10 Strategies to Get Yourself Out of the Pandemic Rut, of course, you go back to all the times that you were in a rut. Mm-hmm. After Thanksgiving, and I published that baby on Amazon, guess what? I was in a rut. And so I didn't even release the book. I just was in such a low place. You know, it was becoming winter and a little bit colder and live events weren't coming back. And that was the whole reason why I made a difference in the world. And I'm all about making my impact. I didn't have an impact. It was just the downward spiral had continued. And I'll be honest and tell you, I landed myself in the Phoenix VA mental health clinic. You know, I went to the ER because I didn't have it together up here in my head. And, you know, it was one of the lowest times that I can remember because I was missionless. You know, I was directionless. You know, if you want to speak in military terms, the mission was completely taken away from me. And I didn't know the next step or the next way forward. And I asked for help, you know, and the VA mental health counselors, they got me the help that I needed. They got me back on track. And, you know, now we're booking some more gigs, and that's not what this is about, promoting that. It's about, I found my way back to who I am with some mental health professionals, right? And I think if we were to survey many of our friends, if you were to line up 25 of them, 100 of them, I don't think you could go through your circle of influence and say, no, everybody's been absolutely fine this year, and, you know, nobody's struggling. And so, you know, maybe I could be that example for folks that have been questioning whether or not they should reach out, whether they have the guts to do so, whether they can put their pride aside to do such a thing. If a guy who performs in front of 50 million people a year on TV can do it, well, why can't you? Mm-hmm. You know, and it just took it took the willingness to ask, and there were people that flooded around me who helped me, and so just so thankful to the Phoenix VA for providing that support. And I hope that folks that are out there that have gone through this year and have struggled a bit do find the fortitude, the strength, the courage, or the time to reach out and say, you know, I need some help, because it's not weakness. That's not weakness at all.
It's a form of strength.
I really think it is.
It really is, because you're acknowledging the fact that, like, yep. To continue going, I need assistance, and that's why so strong.
That's self-aware, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I guess that's maybe one of the big lessons that I've learned this year is, you know, sometimes you see yourself as the bright light in the room, the motivator, the person who it's always on your shoulders to give back and contribute and help others. And sometimes that gas runs out and you don't have to feel like you have to push the car up the hill. You know, there's people around you and hopefully a society that helps you. And so I guess my big lesson from the pandemic is this too shall pass, you know, and those that are around me in my life have really, really helped me in my greatest time of need. And I know that not everybody in the world has been that fortunate to have the journey that I just described. But I'm, you know, as we started out the podcast, I certainly feel fortunate that has been my life.
I want to read everybody, when I asked Mark to be on this podcast, what he told me right off the bat. So I think this is important to people hear this. Okay. So I asked at 10:52 in the morning, buddy, want to get you on my podcast. What does your upcoming schedule look like? We can record in person or virtually, so you don't even have to be local, just an hour of your time. 1 minute later, yes, I'm in. Whoop, whoop. The next 2 Thursdays and Fridays are wide open. Would that work? I'll be in the Fargo area. Sounds like a blast, dude. Thanks for the invite. Thumbs up, fist bump.
I like the reading of the emojis. That's my favorite.
Nobody has responded that way when I've invited them to be on the podcast. I've had people be like, yeah, that would be awesome. I'm really busy right now, but
is this
later.
on camera? I don't want it to be on camera. It's like, it's not on camera.
I don't know. And so to me, that is the exact way that you can sum up Mark J. Lindquist, is that there is no adventure too big or too small. Yeah. And you're on that path right now. And I am so excited. Like when I told Tucker, I'm like, okay, so the guy that I booked to come on, he was on episode 8. We totally forgot him. Yeah, I was like, oh my God. And I don't know who I'm confusing you with. Like, who else has been on this podcast who I associated with? Or maybe it's just because every time I see you, we have such a great time. And I've hosted Mark on my daytime radio talk show. And it's always a blast, and we get such great text messages coming back from like, he should host the show. You should get fired. Be like, thanks, Mom. But it really is. It's just a joy to know you, and I really want to make sure that people can find you out there in the world. Oh, also, I want to say this. So you're a military man. Yeah. And then I see Mark for the first time since the pandemic hits. Oh, yeah. And he's got the longest hair. And this is after a haircut now, right?
Totally. Everett's in Fargo.
It was so shaggy. He looked like he walked off of like a casting session for Mortal Kombat. That's honest to God.
Like he'd just been in a fight.
Like, because someone was like, there's some guy talking to Joel down the hall. And I'm like, well, it's Mark J. Lindquist. I can hear his voice from here. But then I had to do a double take when I saw him because I'm like, whoa.
That's a year no haircuts, buddy.
Yeah, really, that's what we should be commending you for the most. A year without haircuts. When you're living in an RV at the same time touring around, so it's not like you're really getting those deep showers like you should.
I mean, wet wipe showers like basic training. I don't know if I can say that. I'm not dating anybody, so whatever. I guess that trend will continue.
All I know is the hair trimming would have been the only part of being in the military that wouldn't have traumatized me. I probably would have just been like, well, the hair thing is fine. I'm totally down with that. Everything else sucks. Push-ups and getting up at 5. No, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Not good for me. And now I'll pass.
Is there any medium like television or movie that you think like does a pretty good job, not necessarily accurate, but a good job explaining what it's like to be in the military at all? Like anything that stuck out to you?
Oh boy.
And don't say JAG. Please don't say JAG.
And along the lines of that, is basic training different for you in the Air Force versus in the, or like the Army, or does it depend? Is it one basic training and then you go off to the separate branches?
Oh, no. Air Force basic training is, I don't know, cakewalk, maybe?
That's what I've heard from people who aren't in the Air Force but are in other branches.
Absolutely.
I have another buddy who works in the Air Force, and he's always told me plenty of times about how like he's getting crapped on by other members of other branches of the military because he like puts bombs on things.
We are the bottom dwellers of the military hierarchy, right? We are the Chair Force Air Force.
I'd be down for that.
Here's what I don't understand. You can be in the Navy but still fly a plane, like. Right? Like you can be like,
they have their own planes.
That's what Top Gun is, right? Like he's technically in the Navy. Yeah. He's not in the Air Force.
Right? Aircraft
So are
carriers.
you ever like, give us a freaking sub? Like I want to put a jet engine on this sub and just
Can I have 2 bazookas?
Yeah, right? It's like it seems
one for either.
Yeah, it seems like
I never thought of that. JJ.
Right,
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and they also
let us have a sub.
And they don't do just things on land. Like so Navy SEALs, think about it. Like their whole thing is about like we can get onto land and no one will know and then we'll do and I'm like, stay in your lane, Navy.
I love the idea that someone in the Army is like, wait a minute, you're letting them fly planes too? Can we fly?
Yeah.
No. Why we want to fly? Let us fly at least one plane.
Yeah.
I don't know the military protocol, but I am guessing commandeering a nuclear sub is probably going to get you in trouble.
Well, I just was watching the movie Down Periscope today. And so I know that there's plenty of diesel subs that have been decommissioned, but so maybe that's what they'd hand over.
Let's go with that for a plan.
There you go.
Right.
There you go.
We need to get more to Sergeant Bilko territory, I think, JJ.
Oh,
at some
God,
point.
I love Sergeant Bilko. And I also love McHale's Navy. I don't know why.
And you also love Captain Ron, but he's not really a member of the military.
Well, he was, though.
Well, not anymore.
He did serve honorably, but he wanted to go to Dollyland.
To answer your question, though, I would say thank you for your service. That movie that came out a couple years ago.
Yeah, okay.
Who is the actor in that one? Miles Teller?
Yeah.
Is that his name?
Yeah,
Yep.
I think so.
Really good movie. That might give a little bit of insight into what it's really like.
Interesting.
You
Okay.
know?
We've got a fairly good movie watching audience for this. So that's an excellent way to do that. And then if people want to find you, if people want to seek you out, they want to know some of what's going on in your life, maybe they want to book you for something, how are they going to find you?
At Mark J. Lindquist are the social media handles, at Mark J. Lindquist or markjlindquist.com.
Mm-hmm. And then Lindquist as the traditional spelling.
Why did I do that? I should,
We'll have links in the show notes as well.
It's not the cereal. It's not Lindquist. Just so everyone knows. Lindquist. T.
With a D.
Yeah. LINDQUIST. So, Mark, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate this. And of course, if people want to find you, they're going to seek you out online. And I want to read this book. I want to get out of my pandemic rut.
I just won't read it with you.
Make the 11th strategy about how you finally get your book published.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what the 11th strategy
Well,
is.
that could be the forward.
It's the postscript. It's like secret 11th one. I had made 10, but then I couldn't get it published, so I had to.
I had to add another step.
I had to add an 11 one.
My publisher was like, "No one's publishing 10. Everyone's publishing 11. And if you can get it to a baker's dozen, we've got a TV deal for you."
How many strategies do you have? Only 7. I can't sell a book with less than 12 strategies in it.
Tell him to eat more pineapple. That's an easy strategy.
Tell him to get in more ruts.
Thanks, buddy.
I appreciate you, pals.
That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. You know, I'm really embarrassed. I actually meant to get the guy from Seattle, Mark Lindquist. I didn't mean to get Mark J. Lindquist. Now I'm just embarrassed.